Welcome to the Intimate Marriage Podcast, where I teach educated, successful couples how to have incredible, passionate relationships so that you can stop compromising and start feeling fully alive in your relationship. I'm Alexandra Stockwell, aka the Intimacy Doctor. I'm a physician, a relationship and intimacy coach, and I'm an intimate marriage expert. My husband and I have been married for 26 years. We have 4 children and full professional lives, and we've created an amazing marriage. I've shown hundreds of couples how to do so as well. So if you want to deepen your understanding of your own relationship and learn to access new heights of emotional, sensual, and erotic intimacy, you're in the right place. I will show you how. Now, let's dive in. How long have you been married? Are you looking forward to celebrating 34 years together? In this episode of the Intimate Marriage Podcast, I am super excited to talk about an incredible couple that has been married for 34 years. And yes, I'm talking about Kyra Sedgwick and Kevin Bacon. But before we get into the episode any further, I'm going to read a recent review from Jake Gimble. He says on iTunes, "As someone who is obsessed with making the best out of my marriage, I just can't get enough of this show. Keep it coming, Alexandra. We need more great advice like this." Well, Jake, I'm definitely going to keep it coming, and thank you so much for your review. And if you're listening and you haven't left a 5-star rating and a review on the Intimate Marriage Podcast wherever you listen, please do so now. It helps other people know what they can find when they tune in. And today, what they can find when they tune in is a conversation about Kyra Sedgwick and Kevin Bacon. But let me set the scene. Recently, I was in Target, actually, with my son, and we were checking out, and I glanced over the magazines as I typically do. That's more interesting to me to look at rather than the different candy bars or, I don't know, types of gum. And to my surprise, on the cover of People magazine, I saw a picture of Kyra Sedgwick and Kevin Bacon with the caption saying that they've been married for 34 years. And I got super excited about it. I'm not especially a fan of theirs. I'm not a fan of theirs, but that is not what got me so excited. What got me so excited is that on the cover of People magazine, there is a super attractive couple that has been married for 34 years. They are celebrities. They have children. They've raised a family, and they have this beautiful marriage. Now, why specifically did that excite me? Let me tell you. You see, when I first started coaching, I used to ask every couple that I met, I don't mean that I met anywhere, I mean who were clients or potential clients of mine, I would ask them to tell me about the couples that they admired, couples who had a beautiful relationship that inspired them in theirs. It could be relatives, friends, coworkers, celebrities, characters in novels, in history. And you know what? Every single time the couple would look at me, they'd look at one another and say they didn't really know. Every now and then someone might say, well, my grandparents really loved one another. But the quality, the flavor of their marriage, of the grandparents' marriage, was really not relevant for these two modern people who had their own personalities and contexts. And so they weren't going to emulate the grandparents' marriage, even if they were inspired by the love. I stopped asking the question because it didn't really lead anywhere. But when I first asked, I actually expected to get an answer. And in some ways, my heart sank that people didn't have an answer to this question. Because the main way that we learn about relationships, the main way that we learn how to show up as a good partner, how to listen, how to be vulnerable, how to have boundaries, how to be intimate, how to be affectionate, how to be curious, how to be present, how to navigate challenges in a way that creates connection. The main way to learn that is through role models, through having a couple in your life that inspires you and shows you what's possible. And the sad reality is that most people do not have that. And this is super significant because if you didn't experience that with the people who raised you, and you didn't experience it anywhere else, you didn't get it from watching the Brady Bunch or any other afternoon TV show, where exactly are you going to learn it? And the sad fact is that most couples don't have a clear vision about how they are going to create a fantastic marriage. Do they want to? Absolutely. Do they succeed? Well, not if you look at the divorce statistics and not if you consider the epidemic of couples who have conflict-free, passion-free relationships. On a personal note, once I and my husband discovered how to have a really juicy marriage steeped in uncompromising intimacy, everyday eroticism, and a real profound deliciousness, once we learned how to do that, I went from being so private to sharing a lot about our married life. Why? Not because I think people should copy us, but because I want people to have a reference point for a fantastic marriage, hearing how we navigate challenges, what it looks like to feel truly supported by your spouse. I went from really, my husband has always been a little bit more open, and when he would share anything more than I'm his wife, like when he would share anything about a disagreement or a challenge, I would be so upset and clear that that wasn't anybody else's business but our own. But now I talk about our sex life, I talk about our arguments, I talk about how we make financial decisions. And my reason for doing so is because there is such a lack of joyous, orgasmically enriched couples for people to learn from, to be inspired by, to know how good it can be and figure out how you want to create that in your own relationship. So, given everything that I've just said, you can imagine how absolutely delighted I was to see on the cover of People magazine a picture of Kyra Sedgwick and Kevin Bacon so happily together with a caption saying that they have been married for 34 years. So for the first time in about, 30 years, I bought People magazine and I read the article. And I'd like to share what I read in the article. It's not even that long. It's like 3 pages, but considering all the various pictures of them in New York City and LA on their farm in Connecticut with the goats and alpacas and so forth, it's not a whole lot of information. But the information that was there that really spoke to me, I want to share it with you. So the first thing is that you may have already heard me say, if you're a frequent listener to the podcast, in which case I'm so glad you're here. I may be new to you, in which case welcome, or maybe you just listen occasionally. Regardless, I'm so glad you're here, and I want to tell you that I believe one of the most transformational shifts a person can make to really enhance and enjoy and increase the deliciousness in your marriage is to become one another's best fans. Because if you come home to a partner who truly believes in you, well, that functions like rocket fuel when it comes to going for your dreams, taking risks, and really opening and learning to be with one another in extraordinary ways. So I'm a fan of you becoming your partner's biggest fan, and it's something that I've certainly talked about often. And so it was amazing to see in this article that Kyra Sedgwick and Kevin Bacon specifically refer to one another as one another's biggest fans. This is prominent, top of the article, that they are each other's biggest fans. And of course they are, because that is an essential element in creating a happy, gorgeous, inspirational marriage that lasts 34 years and it doesn't look like any end is in sight. The article also refers to what they each are drawn to with one another. And what Kyra Sedgwick says is she immediately responded to how dependable he is. If he says he's going to meet you somewhere at a particular time, he will be there. And that created instant safety and relaxation for her that allowed her to just open up and really connect. And the other thing that she really enjoys is his sense of humor. Again, this is something that it just makes a difference in the everyday, and all those everydays add up to 34 happy years together. In the article, they talk about having nightly dinners with family. That also creates glue both for a couple and a family to listen to one another and express oneself. It creates deep, joyful bonds to really use family mealtime as a time to enjoy one another and connect. They have gone on many family vacations together, including ones with a purpose. The Sedgwick Bacon family have volunteered for Habitat for Humanity in New Orleans after Hurricane Katrina. They've gone on other kinds of service vacations, and that creates purpose and meaning beyond the everyday that really functions as a kind of seasoning or a lubricant for their connection. The other thing that I really want to mention, because I think it's so beautiful and it caused me to reflect on my own marriage, is that over the years, Kyra Sedgwick has been in many films. Of course, Kevin Bacon has been in many films, but Kevin Bacon has directed a film that Kyra Sedgwick was in, and there's a film coming out very soon that Kyra Sedgwick directed that Kevin Bacon stars in. And I thought of my own marriage where there were very short time when I worked very full time and my husband was at home. That was before we had children, and it was a very short time. There have been times when we both worked part-time. There have been long stretches where I was full-time at home and he was full-time working. Now we have a new arrangement where we're each working part-time, but the days that we're working, the other one is completely on. There's no kind of trading duties at the end of the day. Anyway, what I mean to say is that Kyra Sedgwick and Kevin Bacon have set things up so that they have various roles. When it's time for one of them to flourish, the other one supports. When it's time for the other one to flourish, the first one supports. And I think that without needing to be movie stars, there is a version of this which is really relevant in creating a long-lasting, intimate marriage. When you get stuck in particular roles, when you get stuck in a restricted way of expressing yourself, or a particular dynamic between the two of you, no matter how superb and relevant it is at some point, it ends up becoming stale and restrictive. An example in my own marriage is that I cook, and I have done almost all the grocery shopping unless I specifically asked my husband to go pick something up for all of the years of our marriage until 2020. During the pandemic, I was working from home. He was working in the hospital. He was already out and about, and we live in the San Francisco Bay Area where there was a curfew for those initial months in the pandemic. And so anyway, he began grocery shopping. And it took some navigating because he was shopping and I was cooking. So there wasn't always what I wanted, or he'd buy something that I didn't want to have, and we needed to find our way with that. And he still does 100% of the grocery shopping. The only time I go to a grocery store is if I want to buy something very specific for a particular occasion, and it's going to give me pleasure to go get it. So grocery shopping is something that was my role all along, and now it is his role. And that is a very minor switch. I mean, who does the grocery shopping? But it has enhanced our relationship. There's something that feels wonderfully collaborative when he shops and then he sees the food again after I've cooked it. But the main thing that I want to emphasize is that we were in a pattern and we are not in that pattern anymore. And grocery shopping is fairly benign, but when it comes to communication, parenting roles and responsibilities, ways of initiating sex, ways of having sex, ways of going on vacation or choosing where to go on vacation, there are an infinite number of things that there's something that is stabilizing for you to have your role and your spouse to have their role. But it is really beautiful to have enough stability in the marriage that you can shake things up and do something different. And I'm really clear that Kyra Sedgwick and Kevin Bacon have enough elasticity and stability that they can be creative, and sometimes one is in front of the camera and the other one directing, and sometimes the other, and sometimes they're doing their own projects. So I wanted to really celebrate their marriage, just celebrate that there is a well-known couple that has had a long, happy marriage that is on the front page of People magazine. And I invite you to consider each of the elements that I've articulated about their relationship. And if there's one that speaks to you, go ahead and implement it in your relationship. What's the way that you want to switch things up, change roles? Do you want to lean in and become your partner's biggest fan? Do you want to bring more purpose into your family vacations? Or does it inspire you in some other way? I'm certainly inspired by them and trust that you will be too.